Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Franco, and today I'll be discussing the question: should autonomous vehicles be allowed to make life and death decisions in emergency situations? As you know, AI and automation are becoming very popular, and we're seeing them in every corners of our lives. Now, society is being forced to confront a new ethical challenge that did not exist a few decades ago. And one of the most difficult questions involves situations where an accident cannot be avoided and the vehicle must make a split-second decision that could impact human lives. To better understand this issue, I'm going to create a scenario here. Imagine the following situation. You are riding in a full autonomous vehicle when a child suddenly runs into the road. The vehicle has only a fraction of a second to react. It can continue going straight and hit the child. It could swerve into a wall and risk harming the passengers, including yourself, or swerve into another vehicle and potentially injuring multiple people. In this case, no option or result in this outcome has a perfect outcome. The question now becomes, who should make that decision? Should it be left to the human driver, or should the autonomous system be programmed to choose the course of action it believes it will cause the least harm? This type of scenario highlights the ethical challenge that autonomous vehicles are presented with. While I created this scenario for you, you might be asking, why does this matter? Well, the truth is that this issue is becoming increasingly important simply because this is no longer a theoretical technology. This is not sci-fi. This is not things of the future that we hope to reach. These are things that are happening currently on our day-to-day life. Several companies are already testing and deploying self-driving vehicles, and these systems are becoming more sophisticated every year. And as society moves towards greater automation, these decisions must be made regarding what ethical principles are used to guide them. The choices made by the developers today could ultimately influence public safety, government regulation, and the future of transportation itself. Now, before evaluating whether something is ethical, right or wrong, better for worse, it is important to clearly identify both the actor and the action being evaluated. In this case, the ethical actors are the companies and software engineers responsible for designing autonomous vehicle systems. The action being tested in this case is the decision to program these vehicles to make decisions during unavoidable accidents where human lives may be at risk. By clearly identifying the actor and the action, we can apply ethical standards in a constructive and meaningful way. So as I begin to tap into the ethical frameworks, I will first go into utilitarianism, a theory most commonly associated with a philosopher named John Stuart Mill. Basically, this ethical framework argues that the most ethical action is the one that produces the greatest overall benefit while minimizing harm. Rather than focusing primarily on intentions or individual rights, this theory evaluates the consequences of an action. In the simplest terms, if one choice result is a better outcomes for a greater number of people, a utilitarian would generally consider that choice to be the most ethical. This framework is particularly relevant to autonomous vehicles because these systems are designed to evaluate possible outcomes and make decisions based on predicted consequences. As you can see, or probably have experienced, many of us in our lives, these scenarios can become very serious very fast. So when we apply this ethical approach to autonomous vehicles, the central idea and goal is very simple. It's basically to minimize overall harm. In an emergency situation where a collision cannot be avoided, the vehicle may be forced to choose between several outcomes. A utilitarian approach would be to support the option that results in the fewest injuries or deaths. From this perspective, the ethical responsibility of the vehicle is not to avoid making a decision, but rather making the decision that creates the best overall outcome. Supporters of this view, that if technologies can reduce the total amount of harm experienced by society, then allowing to make these decisions may actually be an ethical choice. This is another scenario to better understand the concept a little bit more. Just for another simplified example, suppose an autonomous vehicle faces two unavoidable outcomes. In one scenario, a single person is killed. In the other scenario, four people are killed. A utilitarian analysis would favor the first outcome because it results in less overall harm, while the situation is tragic regardless of the outcome. A utilitarianism focuses on reducing suffering as much as possible. This example demonstrates why many advocates believe autonomous vehicles should be programmed to prioritize minimizing casualties during emergencies. So, a supporter of the machines would have a few valid arguments that strongly support them. For example, they can make claims such as computers often perform better than humans in high pressure situations. Another example could be human drivers can become distracted, fatigued, emotional, or impaired, while autonomous systems do not experience these limitations. They can also process information rapidly, evaluate multiple possible outcomes, and react within milliseconds. Supporters argue that if autonomous vehicles ultimately reduce accidents and save more lives than human drivers, then society benefits as a whole. Using a utilitarian framework, this reduction in overall harm would be considered a strong ethical justification for allowing these systems to make emergency decisions. We're now going to approach a different perspective of ethics, in this case, right based ethics. And this framework argues that every individual possesses inherent rights that should be respected and protected. Rather than asking which outcome benefits the greatest number of people, rights based ethics asks whether each action respects the dignity and rights of each person involved. The critics of autonomous vehicles often rely on principles similar to right based ethics. Their argument is basically that no machine should be given the authority to determine whose life should be sacrificed in order to save others. Could you imagine purchasing a self driving vehicle and learning that it may intentionally sacrifice its passenger if doing so saves a great number of people? There is another major concern that involves responsibility and accountability that people often look over. Now, if an autonomous vehicle makes a decision that results in a person's death, determining responsibility becomes extremely difficult. Should the responsibility fall on the software engineer who wrote the code, the company that manufactured the vehicle, the owner who purchased it, or even the government themselves that approved the technology? These questions remain largely unsolved and represent one of the most significant ethical and legal challenges associated with autonomous vehicles. Ultimately, after applying both ethical frameworks, we could see that they lead to different conclusions. On one end, basically supports autonomous vehicles making emergency decisions because doing so may reduce overall harm and save more lives, while on the other hand, raises concerns that such decisions may violate individual rights by allowing a machine to determine who bears the consequence of an accident. This demonstrates why the issue remains controversial. The ethical evaluation depends heavily on the framework being applied here. So, in the end, for myself, after some thought, some analysis, and viewing both perspectives, I believe autonomous vehicles should be permitted to make emergency decisions, but only under strict oversight, regulation, and transparency. If these systems are going to make decisions that affect human lives, the public should at least understand how these decisions are made and what ethical principles guide them. While autonomous vehicles have the potential to improve safety and reduce accidents, ethical concerns regarding individual rights and accountability cannot be ignored. So I'll leave you with an ultimate question. Would you ride in a car that might sacrifice you to save several strangers? As this technology continues to evolve, society must ensure that innovation is balanced with ethical responsibility. Simply want to say thank you for your time and attention, and have a blessed day.